Hey, this is Seth Parnell, the minister of the Portia Church of Christ, and this is episode 190 of the Midweek Bible Study. Hope that you're doing well. Hope you're having a good day, and always appreciate you stopping by here. I know it's late. Yeah, I apologize for we had some technical difficulties and getting on. I was this close. I was just about to call it, for the evening and pick up next week, and then the very last thing I did finally got to working, and so. And so obviously, tonight we not gonna go too long because it's already late. It's already 7:30, but we'll still go through a few things, and especially if you're catching this later on, then like I said, apologize for the late start, but hopefully you can catch us up later. But as you know, we've been going through the Judges, and we're going to take a look at Judges chapter 9 here, just for a brief minute. But I also want to let you know that you always have an invitation. If you're someone who's in the local area, you can visit us at 307 South Jackson Street in Portia, Arkansas. Visit us at the Portia Church of Christ. Right now we're meeting at 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, 5 o'clock on Sunday night, and 6 o'clock on Wednesday night. And so if you're in the area, feel free to come by and see us. We would love to see you. And also, if you have any suggestions about future episodes, please feel free to send those our way as well. We'd love to hear from you and hear what you have to say. But here tonight, we're going to take a brief look at Judges chapter 9 and the story of a man by the name of Abimelech. And his story is longer than probably what we have time for here right now. But he's an interesting character. He's one of those people that kind of gets lost in the shuffle of the judges sometimes. When you consider like the grand, the entire picture of the book of Judges, this guy oftentimes gets lost, in that. But he's kind of an interesting person. He's not a good person, not a nice one. He's actually a very evil individual, but he did play a big role in the kind of the goings-on of that region at that time. And if you know, Abimelech is the son of Gideon. He was the son of Gideon and one of his concubines, and so he didn't have like the direct inheritance status, but he still could claim Gideon as his father. And if you remember at the end of the story of Gideon, after Gideon had delivered Israel from the Midianites, and after he had gotten through all of that and let them, live in peace, allow them to live independently, free from oppression. I was leading them towards following God. They said to Gideon, they said these very words. They said, "You come and rule over us, and you and your children rule over us, and their children rule over us." They said, "We want you to be a king among us, and we want your descendants to rule over us as well, because you saved us from the Midianites." And what was Gideon's response? He said, "I'm not going to rule over you, and my children aren't going to rule over you, because the Lord rules over you." And that was, Gideon had some faith. He definitely had some trust in God. He knew a bad idea when he saw it. And he knew that even though it was an opportunity of a lifetime, let's say, to be a king, to be a ruler with that type of power, Gideon said, "I'm not going to do it. I'm going to give this is the role of God and not me. And so, no thanks." But one of the sons of Gideon, this man by the name of Abimelech, he thought differently. He thought that this was a pretty good idea. And so he set a plan in motion in order to take this power for himself. And for about a span of 3 years, he was successful. And he was someone who could be actually one of the first registered kings in Israel. Usually we think of, Saul, think of David, think of Solomon. But this man actually came before all those. And he is going to be referred to as a king for about 3 years before he will meet his demise. But the early part of this section, as we see here in verse 1 of chapter 9, it says, "Now Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem, to his mother's kinfolk, and said to them, and to the whole clan of his mother's family, say in the hearing of all the lords of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh." And so his mother's kinfolk spoke all these words on his behalf in the hearing of all the lords of Shechem. And their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, and they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the temple of Baal Berith, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. He went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest of Jerubbaal, survived, for he hid himself. And then all the lords of Shechem and all Beth-Millo came together, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak of the pillar at Shechem. And so this is the first part of the story in which we have an introduction to this man by the name of Abimelech. And he, as I said, he's the son of Gideon. He was the son of a servant that Gideon had, a concubine that was from the land of Shechem, and of course Gideon himself. And he sees an opportunity here in this case. And so what he does is he goes to his mother's family, to his family in Shechem, and he says to them, which is better, that 70 people rule over you or just one rule over you? And then he reminds them, he says, remember, I am your bone and your flesh. I am your relative. I am related directly to you. And so he reminds them of this. And to the people at Shechem, they apparently had a different view than some of the other individuals in Israel. And they inclined to follow Abimelech. They said, this man, he may have a point. And so they take 70 pieces of silver and out of the temple of Baal. And this is what's going to fund the efforts of Abimelech. And so you see, when it's the money of a pagan temple that's funding this thing, you know that it's usually not that good of a deal. But they give him the 70 pieces of silver, and he hires what we call mercenaries. He says worthless and reckless fellows, people who would just hire it out for money. And he goes to his father's house, and there he kills 70 of his brothers. And he executes them there, and all in one day, all except for one, the youngest one, who would escape. You imagine the thirst for power that it takes in order to be able to kill 70 members of your own family, to be able to, take their life for no other reason but to kind of consolidate your own position of power. What kind of heart can make you that decision? What kind of character can actually go through with something like that? It's definitely something to think about, how sometimes power can twist the character of a person. But as we know, Abimelech's not the only person to do this. Think of Herod the Great, that was in power during when Jesus was born. He did some quite frightening things during his day, in order to consolidate his own power. You think of Absalom, the son of David. He did something very similar to Abimelech here. He went and killed a bunch of his own family in order to get his own sense of power. And so when a person gets that kind of tunnel vision, when they get that kind of vision for that power, that's the only thing they think about. They can do some pretty frightening things. And we see how God is absolutely absent from this plan that Abimelech does, and it leads him to do some of these tragic things. Abimelech is not going to be a good example. He's never going to come close to being a righteous person. All he thinks about is himself. And because of that, we know that his end is going to be quite quick, and it's going to be quite severe, and he's going to end up facing the consequences of his actions. But it begs the question, and we'll probably just ask this one question before we head off tonight. As we said, it's going to be a very, very brief one since we got started so late. But when you think about the motivations, for the things that you do, it's very, it's good to, have a goal. It's good to have, things that you want to accomplish in life. It's good to have something in the distance that you can work for, that you can strive for, that you can sacrifice for, that in the end is going to be something that is great, something that you rejoice in. But if we, make those plans, and if we have those motivations, and we completely remove God out of that picture, where do you think that's going to lead us? What is that going to do to our character and our heart? In the end, we're going to keep, kind of folding in. We're going to keep, looking into ourselves, and we're going to do whatever we can in order to build ourselves up, whether that means to take advantage of someone, to hurt someone, to step on someone. It can be any one of those things, and just to enrich ourselves. When you take God out of the picture, humans can be pretty selfish at times, and pretty inward thinking. And it's a natural tendency of humanity that we have to fight against, and we have to work against. As we know, God changes a person. When we live according to what God has given us, the standard that God has given us, that changes a person. A person that's not going to be looking out for himself. He's going to be looking out for the interests of others. He's not going to be just focused on the burdens that he bears, but as Paul says, we're going to bear one another's burdens. We're going to be looking out for others. We're going to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's what we're going to be focused on, not just who can we squeeze or who can we step on in order to just get ourselves a little bit higher. And that's what these individuals, and a lot of these individuals that we find in the situation of being a leader or being a king, that's what they did. You think of Saul's another example. Saul would have killed David 20 times, 30 times when he had the opportunity. He wanted to kill David, so bad. Why? David was innocent, but Saul was jealous. He wanted to consolidate, his power, and he wasn't thinking of God. He was just thinking, of himself. And as I always say, I've said many times, on this study, if you are someone who follows God, and if you give yourself to the gospel, it's going to turn you into the best possible version of yourself, that you can be. And there's a lot of, self-help books out there, a lot of, ways to grow yourself. And it's good to take steps in order to improve yourself in any way that you can. But following the path of a Christian is going to turn you into, it's going to grow that character inside of you into where you're working for something much higher than yourself, much greater and much more important. It's good to see Jackie Henry here with us. Hope that you are doing well. Appreciate you being here with us, and Ted Knight as well. I'm so glad that you're here, and wonderful, always wonderful to see you. I appreciate all you guys being here. I know because of the technical difficulties we had, we got started about 30 minutes, later than we usually do, and so I do apologize, for that. But so glad that you guys are here with us tonight. And I know it's not the first time that you guys have been here with us, and so I definitely appreciate how much you support us. But here you're in, like I said, with Abimelech, he was only had one goal, and that goal was to be king. That goal was to have power. And as we'll probably look at the rest of his story later on, it doesn't end with his brothers. It doesn't end with killing his brothers, the sons of Gideon. But he is going to kill many, many more people before his story is over. His story is just one long, continuous chase after power. And not once does he turn to God. Not once does he think about, spiritual things. But it's all one spiral downward to eventually he meets, his demise. And so when we think about ourselves and we think about where we stand, as a individual and as somebody who is working through this life, as we know, we have to be aware of our motivations. We have to be aware of where God stands in our life. How he dictates what we do and what we say, because there's a healing power that God provides. There is a hope that he provides. There is an inspiration, a energy that he can give us. But as we see here, Abimelech was the one who came up with this plan, and he wanted to follow through with it, but it was also the men of Shechem that supported him and that gave him the resources to do this. And so two people are at fault here, Abimelech himself and also the men at Shechem, because they supported this evil plot, this evil decision that he had. And so not only do we have to be conscious of our own decisions and conscious of the direction that we're traveling and our own path in life, but also we need to be cautious about what we support as well and what we throw our energy behind. We don't want to support something that is in the end is goes against what God would have us to do, or supports things that push back against that. But we want to be someone who lifts up what is good, who lifts up what is loving, who lifts up what is encouraging and good and true. Those are the things that we want, to lift up as Christians. And there is a lot of things that a lot of things that we could look at. A lot of interesting things, that take place, in this world. But if we're someone who allows the word of God in order to follow through with our life, in order to mold it, in order to focus it, then not only are we going to avoid hurting other people, but we're also going to be working towards, as we said before, that wondrous hope, that promise that we can look forward to in the future. Because God has told us very plainly, we have an opportunity, we have an ability to come to him and to accept that hope of promise, but it's up to us in order not only to accept that, but to live worthy of the calling that he has given us. And so that doesn't mean that we're going to earn our salvation by working for it, but God still requires things of us in order to be obedient to him, in order to be someone who is found faithful to him. And so if we're someone who takes action on those things, we can avoid the negative example of a man like Abimelech here, and we can be someone who follows the example of someone that we studied last time, Gideon, who in the end, he eventually, it took him a little while. He had to deal with a lot of fear. He was scared for a while, and eventually he was empowered by the faith that God gave him, and he was able, to do what God called him to do. And so those are some things to keep in mind, and some things to understand as we go along. But I believe we'll probably, that's a kind of introduction to the story of Abimelech. And in the rest of this chapter, the son, Jotham, the one who survives the massacre, he's going to give this parable of the trees, in which he's going to tell to the people of Shechem. And he's going to tell them about, their support of Abimelech. And in the next chapter, Abimelech is going to go on another rampage and end up finding his doom. But we'll kind of go over that a little bit next week. But as I said, it's already late, so we will call it there. But it's good to have you guys here. For those who showed up here, I really appreciate you. We were a little bit off schedule tonight, but so glad that you were able to be here with us. But until next time, I know we have got let's see, I talked to a bunch of people today. We got two confirmed and maybe a third as far as guests coming up, and so we'll have some extra people coming in, and so I think we'll have some good conversations about the Bible and about these spiritual things. And also in the middle of June, it's going to be our summer break, and so we'll be off for about 2, maybe 3 weeks, because I'll be at church camp for 1 week, and then we usually have another week off. And so that's coming up in June, and so we'll be aware of that. But other than that, I think that we've got a good lineup coming up. We're going to finish out our study of the Judges, and then we're going to look at some other things as well. But like I said, appreciate everyone. Hope you have a wonderful night, and I hope you can go out and be the light of the world and glorify God in everything that you do. Catch you next time.